So there's a lot of content that's been made here in Minneapolis after the tragic ICE shooting on Wednesday. And something I've seen is people making videos about things that have stood out to them just about what has happened. One in particular is the person who made the video about the giant dinosaur and shark figurines on Portland that are right next to where Renee Good was shot. And something that happened for me sort of in this vein was when the announcement was made that Thursday morning there would be a protest at the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building over by Fort Snelling. And what stood out to me is that there are a lot of buildings that have names on them, and we may not know who the people are, but I actually am aware of who Bishop Henry Whipple is from the history of Minnesota. So this is Bishop Henry Whipple. He was an Episcopal priest and the first Episcopal bishop in the state of Minnesota, which is the reason he came to Minnesota in the first place. And before arriving in Minnesota, he was known as an advocate of immigrants. And once arriving in Minnesota in the 1850s, he soon became known as an advocate for the indigenous people of Minnesota. And this is important to note because there is an event that happened very soon after his arrival in Minnesota, which is the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. So what happened leading up to the war in 1862 was an incredible mistreatment of the indigenous tribes here in Minnesota, especially the Dakota, which ended up leading tragically to a 6-week war in south-central Minnesota. And in the wake of the war, the commander of Minnesota's forces in the area, Henry Sibley, essentially put all of the warriors on trial who were at Camp Release, which is where the Dakota surrendered. And in those trials, some of them lasting only 5 to 10 minutes, the Minnesotans who put the indigenous people on trial convicted and condemned 303 of them to be executed. And where Henry Whipple comes back into the picture is that as an advocate of the indigenous people and the Dakota here in Minnesota, he was one of the primary white people advocating for the Dakota directly with Abraham Lincoln in the midst of the Civil War. And so there's a lot here that could probably be said about how the indigenous people actually view Henry Whipple. But what has kept coming back to mind is how a person who is known as an advocate for immigrants and for the indigenous, especially here in Minnesota, would feel about having ICE operating out of a building in his name, attacking indigenous and immigrants here in Minnesota.